All right, so now we've got a nice dry surface, so we won't be moving wet paint around. We can put new layers on. And I do want to establish where my tree is going to go. And I want that to be a multi-trunked tree. So, similar to this is the tree really that has kind of inspired this. So we're going to do several trunks for our little tree. And again, we're making our own brown, and the orange and blue makes a great brown. So we'll mix those two with the smaller brush. And, oops, I just got it on my sky. Okay, so let's find our little trunk. Let's say that it's going to be a little off center, and it's going to come up past the tops of these trees. Let's see how many little trunks. I'll have an extra branch coming off this one. And then maybe one right here. So that's 5. I'll thicken up the center one. He's the main trunk. I think 5 is a good number. Let's see, or maybe, well, I'll just bring this one over. I'm not sure you can see this. Dark on dark, maybe you can. Okay, and then we'll add a little trunk here, or branch, so that these all create kind of a starting place for the canopy. Okay, so that kind of tells us where our tree is going to go. It'll branch out into this area. And going back to these guys, they've got to darken up. So we'll use the small brush. So let's go back to our dark green. And to get our dark green, we're going to use red and green. Red and green, and then a little bit of the yellow ochre to warm it. Let's see. That's not a bad green. I think I want it a little warmer still. Well, maybe not for this layer. This is the dark layer. Okay, so maybe stick a little orange in it. Orange is another color that'll warm the green. So now I just want to spend time with my little brush, kind of doing a dabbing pattern to suggest the texture of the tree foliage. That's a fun word for me. Just a little dabbing. We'll add other colors into these, a little gold eventually for the lightest layer. We're just trying to get these a little more defined. I should put my paint over here. That would make more sense. Okay. Dab, dab, dab. And I'll just dip straight into gold without rinsing my brush. So I've got green and gold on my brush, and I'm just going to start throwing a little bit of that into the tops of these trees for some highlight. It'll blend some with the green, which is a good thing. A little more. You can even take the color of your sky, the blue and white we mixed up, and get a little bit of that on the edges. Get your brush real clean, hopefully. We'll see what happens here. All right, clean brush, and that light blue had a lot of white in it. Let's see. See how my brush wasn't clean? Let me get my brush clean. Here we pull all that paint out there. That's better. Okay. So if I just take and come right along the tops of these trees and dab like we have been, you can get this kind of sense that the trees and sky are connected, not just one layer on top of another. A little more of an atmospheric kind of blending. You can even have a little bit of that blue highlight on the very tops of your trees. Now, once it starts blending with the green too much, wipe it off. Go back to your sky color. This is a nice way to combine the two so it's not just a harsh tree line sitting on top of a sky. You can also use this technique to reshape trees with your sky color. I'm going to get rid of that little, oops, I thought I was going to get rid of that little place in my sky. Let's blend that out. Now it just looks more like a cloud. Okay, so we've got a little bit of blue along the tops of our trees, just lightly dabbing. And like I said, if you want to reshape a tree, this is a good way to do it. You could come down into it, do some little cut-ins to create different shapes. And then we also have the gold, which is a warm color for trees to suggest light. And it should be darker down, towards the ground, less light hitting that area. So we'll go back to that really dark green, which was the mix of red and green. I want it a little darker. I think I'll put a little blue in there. And we'll be pulling some grass up over this tree line here in a minute. Okay, where's my dark? That doesn't look. A little more red. Oh, that was a lot of red. There, that's better. So I'm just scumbling more or less. Just come in here and build that up. That was a lot of paint. Kind of get between those tree trunks. We'll define those again. They're disappearing into the dark, so we'll pull them out with some gold highlight eventually. Now is that another? Oh, I just keep making messes on my sky. But it's acrylic. You can fix it. Just like that. You can even go back in and play with your sky. You could define clouds more. What if we want to make a little suggestion of a little more of a cloud? Kind of wispy. Then do some little circular motions. Well, if you're going to have one, you need another one, right? We'll do small ones at the down here because as they get closer to the horizon, they appear to look smaller. They're farther off in the distance, maybe. And those are just white clouds. I mean, clouds have color, so we could create a little bit of a shadow, I guess, on the back side of that cloud, maybe a little purple, which would just be a little red and blue, plus a lot of white, because clouds, you don't need that color to get too dark. So let's put a little more blue in there. Darker than the sky, but not much. Okay, let's see what happens here. So if I wanted to create a little bit of a shadow, being very light with my brush stroke here. And while that's still wet, I want to rinse out my brush and come back and just soften that back in. And this, I kind of got off on a cloud tangent. I don't think I intended to originally. So if you like the original sky, you can stick with that. But if you want to play with making clouds, you can try this little technique. And you can add a lot more color. You can add yellows and reds and... But maybe that'll work for now. The other thing you can do is if you want to create, after the first layer that you've scumbled in and it's kind of blended with the blue, you can get some really bright pops of white by doing a second layer just in selective areas where the clouds are a little more built up. And they start to look a little cloudish. Oh, that was a lot of water in my brush. I pulled all the paint off with water. Get that built back up. All right, happy little clouds. Happy little clouds. Okay, let's start our canopy of our tree. So I think we're going to use the small brush. Not sure about that actually. Big canvas, I used the big brush. I think we'll do it with this one. So we're going to do a very dark canopy. We're going to do a mix of that red and green. That's a little more towards the red, but it's going to look very murky and dark, but we can build our light on top of that. So I'm mixing red and green. I'm getting kind of a burgundy, and that's probably a good and dark place to start. So to build up my canopy, I'm just going to use a loose little dabbing brush stroke, kind of dab and pull, and think about leaving some openings for the sky holes so that we see through the tree. It's not completely solid. And what shape? Let's have this kind of come out. And I'll think about, okay, my tree is going to be pretty round, so I'll just start by suggesting that. Maybe even pulling this out farther. Roundish. We don't want it to look like a lollipop. So there needs to be some areas that cut in and out to give it a little more of a natural shape. So now that I've kind of got that little bit of an outline, I think it'll be easier to use the big brush to do some fill-in. Let me wipe off my brush. Okay, that's better. I'm getting it all over me. All right. So we want the red and the green mixed up quite a bit. Nice and dark. And instead of laying the brush down flat, I think I'll just use the corner of it. So it gives me a happy medium. And again, the sky holes, you're just trying to suggest those openings that you see through the branches and the leaves. Better to leave too many and then go back and fill them in than to just, of course you can always paint your sky back in. You can take that blue-white mix and create sky holes. So you can approach it either way. So you really can't mess up. You just can't mess up. Pull him out a little more here. There goes all that sky we painted. All right. That's got quite a few openings in the canopy. So that's a good thing. And then the leaves come down. I want to make sure I cover the tops of the trunks, although I can always adjust that if necessary. Roundish. So where do I want? I think I want it to come out a little farther here. Maybe a little flatter. Yeah, like that. So we've got a few little areas that are breaking up the lollipop shape. Looks tree-ish. So far, so good. All right, so we're going to let that dry as a base for our tree. And we're going to think about our grasses. Also our trunks. Let's think about our trunks too, because they've disappeared into the darkness. So let's make them a little lighter. Let's take the orange blue mix. Let's make the brown. Add in some yellow ochre. And get in the light where I can see. There's a little glare. Redefine those. And I think I just need to have a dark side and a light side. So to go darker, we'll just go back to that original red-green and get as dark as I can. Maybe if I put blue in, it'll go even a little darker. All right, let's see if this will create a nice dark. Yeah, that's darker. Start dark and then lighten. That's what we're going for. And now I can go to gold. Just gold. and see if I can show some light hitting those. Because the paint's wet, of course, it wants to blend. All right, so that helps, just putting a little bit of light on those on the dark background. So light edges against dark edges against light edges. And now we're going to think about our grass while our tree is drying. And our grasses, it's fall, so we're going to think about fall, orange gold grasses. And I think for my first layer, I'll do just a muddy orange blue mix. It has a little red in it too. Add a little bit of gold. And let's see what happens with this. Now, for the grass, I do want to think about an up and down brush stroke to suggest the way the grasses grow. And I'm not seeing this a whole lot yet, but we'll get there. Always better to have layers. We'll pull those grasses eventually up over the bottom edge of the trunk. Put it in the grass. All right, so that needs to lighten up considerably. Let's just go to plain gold. Oops, I've got green in my gold. Sloppy painter. I think that'll work though. Little green, little gold. And try that again. Now, you can turn this sideways and get a thin brush stroke. I think what I'll do though is just do this up until the edge of the grass, and then I'll go over to the smaller brush where I have a little more control. And you typically start at the top and work your way down with grasses. There's a little clump. Work him in there. It's getting better. It's lightening. All right. We're going to get it lighter though. And this, okay, so now we're going to do another blow dry break. I'll be right back.